evening, my dear followers of my newly born YouTube channel. My dear 22 followers, I'm sorry for not posting in a bit, but I'm gonna try and restart posting more often and do more content for y'all. So today, what I wanted to talk to you about and tell you the story of Maison Margiela and how he actually became such a great and um, influential designer of nowadays. And actually, Maison Margiela is like, it's not his actual name. Maison Margiela, his actual name is like Martin Margiela, and Maison means like a house in French. That's like a fun fact. Yeah. So like, going to the story. In a world of fashion, where spectacle and self-promotion overrule, the story of Martin Margiela is almost a contradiction, a tale of greatness built not on fame, but on being anonymous. His journey from a quiet Belgian boy to the most influential ghost in modern fashion reads like a fable about rebellion, creativity, and restraint. Restraint. So, about his beginnings in Belgium, Martin Margiela was born in Genk, Belgium in 1957 in a world far removed from the Paris runways. As a child, he was fascinated by transformation, not just fabric, but of meaning. He would take apart his dolls and reassemble them in strange ways, a small preview of the deconstructionist aesthetic that would later define his career. He grew up watching French couture shows on a small black and white television. He was impressed by designers like Gorgeous and Paco Rabanne, who challenged controversial silhouettes. But Margiela never dreamed of being a star. He was more interested in what clothes could say rather than who wore them. So, in the late 1970s, he entered the Royal Academy of Fine Arts in Antwerp, which is like really like the most famous school of fashion in the world, where it had like all the famous designers came from. While Margiela graduated just before them, he shared their vision that fashion could be intellectual, subversive, and poetic. So after graduating in 1979, Margiela moved to Paris, where he worked under Jean-Paul Gaultier from 1984 to 1987. Gaultier's atelier was a playground of ideas, bold, ironic, and filled with energy. Margiela learned the technical mastery of tailoring, but also the courage to challenge norms. However, while Gaultier thrived in the spotlight, Margiela felt increasingly drawn to the shadows. He didn't want to be seen as a celebrity designer. He wanted his work to speak for itself. So, in 1988, he founded his own label, Maison Margiela. The revolution of the white label. From the very beginning, Margiela's approach was unlike anything the fashion world has seen. There were no logos, only a small black-white label stitched with 4 visible seams, a sign of both purity and rebellion. His team wore wild lab coats like scientists in a fashion laboratory. His runway shows held in abandoned playgrounds, subway stations, and warehouses, often with the audience standing close to the models, blurring the line between performance and presentation. His debut collection shocked Paris. Models walked the runway with painted faces, visible seams, and reworked vintage garments. Sleeves were misplaced, hems were frayed, proportions were distorted, yet somehow As Margiela's influence grew, so did his mystique. He refused interviews, avoided photographs, and never appeared at the end of his shows. Even journalists couldn't describe what he looked like. His anonymous appearance wasn't a stunt. It was the philosophy. He believed the designer should serve the clothes, not the other way around. The most important thing, he once said, is that the garment lives on the body. This philosophy also shaped the way Maison Margiela operated. The brand functioned as a collective, where every team member had input. It wasn't about a hierarchy or ego, it was about creation. His anonymity became a mirror that reflected the viewer's own ideas back at them. The less people knew about him, the more they protected, and the stronger his myth became. Through the 1990s and early 2000s, Margiela's house grew into a quiet powerhouse. His ideas, repurposing vintage garments, exposing construction details, blurring gender, became cornerstones of modern fashion. He launched the concept of the replica line, reproducing found garments from the different eras with a small tag explaining their origin. He pioneered upcycling long before sustainability became a buzzword. He questioned the entire notion of luxury, turning imperfection into elegance. When the Maison was acquired by the OTB Group, which is like Diesel's parent company, in 2002, Margiela continued to design until around 2009. Then, true to form, he vanished. There was no farewell show, no interview, no public statement. He simply walked away, leaving behind a legacy that was already legend. After Margiela's departure, others took over the creative direction of his brand. Most notably, John Galliano, whose vision stood in stark contrast to Margiela's silence. Yet the DNA of the house remained unmistakable, conceptual, thoughtful, and silently erratic. In the years that followed, Margiela's influence could be seen everywhere, from Vêtements to Balenciaga, from the rise of conceptual streetwear to the mainstreaming of deconstruction. In 2019, filmmaker Rainier, I don't know how to pronounce it, Rainier Halsemir probably, released the documentary Martin Margiela. In his own words, the first time Margiela himself narrated the story, his voice, calm and reflective, finally emerged, but still unseen. Martin Margiela